The manila envelope in my hands contained 20 years of lies, and I was about to destroy the woman who had stolen my entire life. My fingers trembled as I opened it, knowing that what lay inside would change everything between my sister and me forever. My name is Amelia Thompson, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I was the forgotten daughter of a millionaire businessman who had left everything to my older sister, Diana. I had spent 2 decades scraping by as a social worker at Riverside Community Services, watching Diana live in luxury while I struggled to pay rent on my studio apartment. Every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone in my life had been overshadowed by the bitter taste of being the unwanted child, the one who didn't deserve our father's love or his fortune. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when the people keeping them grow careless with age and wine. It started with a phone call from James Morrison, Dad's former attorney, on a gray Tuesday morning in March. His voice was shaky, aged by guilt, and what I would later learn was terminal cancer giving him a sudden urge to clear his conscience. "Amelia, I need to see you," he said without preamble. "It's about your father's will. There are things you need to know." I almost hung up. For 20 years, I had accepted that Dad's will left everything to Diana. She had been the one to handle all the legal matters after his death, the one who sat in Morrison's office and emerged with red eyes and the heavy burden of inheritance. I was 22 then, fresh out of college, naive and trusting. Diana was 30, polished and confident. Everything I wasn't. "I know what the will says, Mr. Morrison," I replied, stirring my instant coffee with more force than necessary. Diana inherited everything: the house, the business, the investments. I got nothing. That's just it. "Amelia, you didn't get nothing. You got everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank into my kitchen chair. The phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. "What are you talking about?" "Meet me at my office this afternoon. Come alone." "And Amelia?" "Don't tell Diana you're coming." The next few hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I couldn't concentrate on my caseload, couldn't focus on the troubled families I was supposed to help. All I could think about was Morrison's voice, the weight of regret in those few words, and the impossible possibility that my entire life had been built on a lie. Morrison's office looked exactly as I remembered it from 20 years ago. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound law books, and the perpetual smell of old paper and disappointment. But the man behind the desk was a shadow of his former self. Cancer had hollowed out his cheeks and dulled his eyes, but his hands were steady as he placed a thick folder on the desk between us. "I should have done this years ago," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been a coward, Amelia. A goddamn coward. I don't understand. Your father's will, the real one." He opened the folder and pulled out a document I had never seen before. This is what he actually wrote, what he signed and had notarized just 3 months before his death. My eyes scanned the pages, but the legal language swam before me. Then I saw it, clear as day. "To my beloved daughter, Amelia Thompson, I leave the entirety of my estate, including Thompson Industries, all real estate holdings, and all financial assets." "This can't be real," I whispered. "It's real. Your father left you everything. The house, the company, the investments. All of it. He loved you, Amelia. He saw your compassion, your dedication to helping others. He knew you would use his wealth responsibly. But Diana showed me the will. She had documents, legal papers." Morrison's laugh was bitter. "Forgeries. Very good ones, but forgeries nonetheless." Diana came to me a week after the funeral with a proposition. She had already moved into the house, had already started making decisions about the business. She said you were too young, too impractical, that you would squander everything. She offered me a substantial sum to keep quiet about the real will. The room spun around me, 20 years of poverty, of struggle, of believing I was unloved and unwanted. 20 years of watching Diana live in the mansion where I should have grown up, running the company that should have been mine. making donations to charities with money that should have funded my dreams. Why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because she was desperate. Your father had been disappointed in Diana for years. Her drinking, her failed marriage, her complete lack of interest in the family business. He had planned to leave her a trust fund, enough to live comfortably, but not enough to destroy herself with. But the bulk of his estate, his life's work, he wanted that to go to you. And you just let her steal it. Morrison's eyes filled with tears. I was weak. I had gambling debts, serious ones. The money Diana offered me would have solved all my problems. I told myself I was protecting you, that you were better off without the burden of so much wealth and responsibility. But I was protecting myself, and I've regretted it every single day since. I sat in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what I had learned. 20 years of lies, of stolen life, of a sister who had looked me in the eye at every family gathering and pretended to be the loving, successful older sibling while she was living off my inheritance. What can I do about it now? I asked. The real will is still valid. There's no statute of limitations on fraud of this magnitude. You can contest Diana's claim, expose the forgeries, and reclaim what's rightfully yours. But Amelia, you need to understand what you're up against. Diana isn't just going to hand over your inheritance. She's built her entire life on it. She has lawyers, resources, connections. This will be a war. I thought about my tiny apartment, my second-hand furniture, my student loans that I was still paying off at 42. I thought about Diana's mansion on the hill, her designer clothes, her luxury vacations. I thought about the times I had asked her for help, for small loans to fix my car or pay for medical bills, and how she had acted like she was doing me a tremendous favor by giving me a few $100s from what should have been my own money. Let it be a war then, I said. Walking out of Morrison's office, I felt like I was seeing the world through new eyes. Every building, every car, every person I passed seemed different somehow, as if I had been looking at everything through a dirty window that had suddenly been cleaned. The weight of the manila envelope in my hands felt like it contained not just legal documents, but justice itself. But I knew I couldn't just march into Diana's mansion and demand my inheritance back. 20 years of comfortable lies had made her complacent. But she wasn't stupid. If I tipped my hand too early, she would have time to prepare, to hide assets, to create new lies. No, this had to be done carefully, methodically. I had to be smart about it. I spent the next week researching everything I could about Diana's life. It wasn't hard to find information about her. She was a prominent figure in the city's social scene, regularly featured in the society pages of the local newspaper. She sat on the boards of several charities, was a major donor to the arts, and had even been named Businesswoman of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce 3 times. All of it funded by my money. The more I learned, the angrier I became. Diana had used my inheritance to build a reputation as a philanthropist and community leader. She had donated millions to causes I cared about, taking credit for generosity that should have been mine. She had funded scholarships for disadvantaged students, supported homeless shelters, and contributed to medical research, all while her own sister struggled to make ends meet. But I also found something else: cracks in the perfect facade. Diana's personal life was a mess. She had been married and divorced 3 times, each divorce more expensive than the last. She had a drinking problem that she tried to hide behind designer sunglasses and carefully scheduled public appearances. And most importantly, she had been making increasingly risky investments with the company's money. Thompson Industries was in trouble. The business that my father had built from nothing was hemorrhaging money under Diana's leadership. She had expanded too quickly, taken on too much debt, and made deals that sounded good in boardrooms but were disasters in practice. The company was months away from bankruptcy, and if it failed, my inheritance would disappear with it. I realized I didn't just need to expose Diana's lies. I needed to save my father's company before she destroyed it completely. I started by reaching out to some of Dad's old business associates, people who had known him before his death and might remember details about his intentions. Most of them were retired or had moved on to other ventures, but a few were still around and willing to talk. One of them was Robert Henley, who had been Dad's business partner for 15 years before they had an amicable split in the 1990s. Robert was in his 70s now, but his memory was sharp, and he had strong opinions about what had happened to Thompson Industries. Your father would be heartbroken if he could see what Diana has done to his company. Robert told me over coffee at a downtown cafe. He built that business to last generations, and she's treating it like her personal piggy bank. Did he ever talk to you about his will? I asked. Robert's eyes sharpened. He did, actually. He was worried about Diana, said she had no head for business and too much taste for the bottle. He wanted to make sure the company would be in good hands after he was gone. What did he say about me? He was proud of you, Amelia. Said you had his sense of justice, his compassion for people who were struggling. He thought you would use the company's resources to make a real difference in the world, not just throw fancy parties for other rich people. Armed with this information, I began to formulate a plan. I couldn't just walk into court with Morrison's documents and expect to win. I needed to build a case, gather evidence, and find a way to prove that Diana had knowingly committed fraud. More importantly, I needed to find a way to save Thompson Industries before it was too late. The first step was getting inside information about the company's current state. I couldn't just call up and ask for financial records, but I could find someone who had access to them. It took some digging, but I found out that Diana's current assistant, Maria Santos, had been with the company for 5 years and had become increasingly frustrated with Diana's erratic behavior and poor decisions. I arranged to, accidentally, run into Maria at a coffee shop near the Thompson Industries building. It wasn't hard to strike up a conversation. She was stressed, overworked, and clearly unhappy with her job. After a few casual encounters, I suggested we grab lunch together. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Maria confided over salad and sandwiches. Diana is running the company into the ground. She's making deals without consulting anyone, borrowing money against assets we don't have. And when I try to warn her about the consequences, she just tells me to mind my own business. It must be hard, watching something you care about being destroyed, I said carefully. Your father built something amazing, Maria said, not knowing who she was talking to. He hired my mother back in the 80s, gave her a chance when no one else would. This company used to mean something. Now it's just Diana's personal playground. Maybe someone should do something about it. Maria looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. It was time to take a risk. I mean, maybe someone who actually cares about the company's future should have a say in what happens to it. Over the next hour, I carefully revealed who I was and what I had learned about my father's real will. Maria was shocked, then angry, then determined. She had seen Diana's true character up close and had no loyalty to a woman who was destroying everything my father had built. I can get you the financial records, she said. All of them. And I can document Diana's recent decisions, show exactly how she's been mismanaging the company. But you have to promise me something. What? When you take control of the company, you'll fix it. You'll bring back the values your father believed in. You'll make Thompson Industries something to be proud of again. I promised, and I meant it. Getting the documents was easier than I had expected. Maria had administrative access to most of the company's records, and what she couldn't access directly, she could request under the guise of routine business. Within 2 weeks, I had a complete picture of Thompson Industries' financial state, and it was worse than I had imagined. Diana had taken out massive loans against the company's assets, using the money to fund her lifestyle and her increasingly desperate attempts to find a business opportunity that would solve all her problems. She had invested in a tech startup that had gone bankrupt, bought real estate at the peak of the market and watched it lose half its value, and entered into a partnership with a company that was under investigation for fraud. The company was hemorrhaging money, and Diana was covering the losses by selling off assets and taking on more debt. At the current rate, Thompson Industries would be bankrupt within 6 months. But I also found something else in the records, evidence of Diana's fraud. Among the documents were copies of correspondence with Morrison's law firm, including payments made to Morrison personally, not to his firm. There were also documents showing Diana had hired a forger to create fake legal papers. and records of payments to witnesses who had signed affidavits supporting her version of events. It was all there, documented in black and white. Diana had stolen my inheritance and then spent 20 years systematically destroying it. I met with Morrison again, this time bringing the evidence I had gathered. He was weaker than before, but his eyes lit up when he saw the documents. "This is it," he said. "This is everything we need to prove fraud. With this evidence and my testimony, you can not only reclaim your inheritance, but also have Diana prosecuted for criminal fraud." "What about the company?" I asked. "That's trickier. Even if you win in court, it will take time. And Thompson Industries might not survive the legal battle. But there might be another way." Morrison explained that many of the company's debts were personally guaranteed by Diana, meaning she was personally liable if the company couldn't pay. If I could find a way to expose her fraud before the company went bankrupt, I might be able to force her to repay the money she had stolen, money that could be used to save Thompson Industries. "It's risky," he warned. "If you move too fast, she might declare bankruptcy and you'll lose everything. But if you wait too long, the company will fail and your inheritance will be worthless." I knew I had to act soon, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. Diana had spent 20 years building defenses around her stolen life. I couldn't just attack her directly. I needed to find her weakness, the one thing that would make her vulnerable. The answer came from an unexpected source: Diana's youngest ex-husband, Marcus Reed. Marcus had been married to Diana for 3 years before their divorce 2 years ago. He was a decent man who had genuinely loved Diana, but he had left her when her drinking and erratic behavior became too much to handle. He had also walked away from their marriage with very little money, despite having contributed significantly to several of Diana's business ventures. I found Marcus working as a bartender at an upscale restaurant downtown. He was surprised to see me, but not unfriendly. We had gotten along well during his marriage to Diana, and he had always treated me with more respect than Diana ever had. "I heard you were having some trouble with Diana," he said as he poured me a glass of wine after his shift ended. "What kind of trouble?" "Legal trouble, financial trouble. She's been making some very stupid decisions lately. And word gets around in business circles. People are starting to ask questions about Thompson Industries." I decided to trust him. Marcus had been hurt by Diana too, and he had no reason to protect her. I told him everything: the real will, the fraud, the company's financial situation, and my plan to expose the truth. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "I knew she was lying about something," he said finally. "She always had money, but she was always stressed about money. She would get drunk and rant about how she deserved everything she had, how she had sacrificed so much for the family business. It never made sense." "Did she ever say anything specific?" "She mentioned you a few times. Said you were too weak to handle the responsibility of wealth, that you were better off poor because it made you more compassionate. She actually seemed proud of keeping you in poverty, like she was protecting you from corruption." The callousness of it took my breath away. Diana hadn't just stolen my inheritance, she had convinced herself that she was doing me a favor. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "Diana has been seeing a therapist, Dr. Patricia Brennan. She's been going for about 6 months, ever since the company's problems got really bad. She told me she was finally ready to deal with her guilt about some family issues." "Guilt about what?" "She wouldn't say, but maybe Dr. Brennan knows something." I knew I couldn't directly contact Diana's therapist, but I could use this information. If Diana was feeling guilty about her fraud, she might be more vulnerable to pressure than I had thought. I decided it was time to make my move. I started by scheduling a meeting with Diana under the pretense of asking for financial help. It wasn't unusual for me to ask her for money, though I hated doing it. This time, I told her I was having trouble with medical bills and needed a loan. Diana agreed to meet me at her mansion, the house that should have been mine. Walking up the circular driveway, past the manicured gardens and marble fountains, I felt a mixture of rage and determination. This was the last time I would come to her as a supplicant. Diana met me at the door with her usual air of benevolent superiority. She was dressed in a silk blouse and designer jeans, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like success, like confidence, like everything I had been denied. "Amelia, darling," she said, embracing me with the kind of hug that managed to be both affectionate and condescending. Come in, come in. I've made us some tea." We sat in the living room, surrounded by expensive furniture and artwork that had been bought with my money. Diana poured tea from a delicate china set that had belonged to our grandmother, another family heirloom that should have been mine. "Now, tell me about these medical bills," she said, settling back into her chair with the practiced ease of someone who had never worried about money. I played my role perfectly, spinning a story about unexpected dental work and prescription medications. Diana listened with the kind of sympathetic attention she had perfected over the years, the concerned big sister who was always there to help. "Of course I can help," she said when I finished. "Family is family. I'll have my accountant transfer $5,000 to your account tomorrow. Will that be enough?" "Actually, Diana, I need to ask you something else." "What's that?" "I need to know about Dad's will." Diana's teacup paused halfway to her lips. It was a tiny hesitation, barely noticeable, but I caught it. "What about it?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I need to see it. The actual document." "Why?" "You know what it says." "I know what you told me it says, but I've never actually seen it myself." Diana set down her teacup with deliberate care. "Amelia, we've been through this. Dad left everything to me because he knew I could handle the responsibility. You were young, you were more interested in your social work than in business. He made the right choice. Then you won't mind showing me the will. It's in a safe deposit box at the bank. I don't just carry it around with me." "Then let's go to the bank." "This is ridiculous. Why are you suddenly so interested in this?" I stood up, pulling the manila envelope from my purse. "Because I found out about the real will. Diana, I know what you did." The color drained from Diana's face. She stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake. "I don't know what you're talking about. James Morrison told me everything. The real will, the forgeries, the bribes. I know Dad left everything to me, and I know you stole it." For a moment, Diana looked like she might deny it. Then her shoulders sagged, and 20 years of lies seemed to crumble around her. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "You were so young, so idealistic. You would have given it all away to charity or wasted it on some noble cause. I was protecting our father's legacy. By destroying his company? I've been trying to save it. Do you think this has been easy? Do you think I wanted to be responsible for all of this? You weren't supposed to be responsible for it. It was supposed to be mine." Diana stood up, her composure finally cracking. "And what would you have done with it? You were 22 years old, Amelia. You had no business experience, no understanding of what it takes to run a company. You would have run it into the ground within a year. So instead you spent 20 years running it into the ground yourself? I've been trying to save it. Every decision I've made has been to protect the company, to protect our father's legacy. By taking out massive loans, by making risky investments, by bleeding the company dry to fund your lifestyle." Diana's face flushed with anger. "My lifestyle? You think this is all about my lifestyle? I've sacrificed everything for this company. My marriages, my happiness, my peace of mind. I've been carrying this burden for 20 years while you've been free to live your simple, uncomplicated life." Simple, uncomplicated, Diana. I've been living in poverty while you've been living in luxury with my money. Your money. You think money would have made you happy. You think inheriting a fortune would have been a blessing? It's been a curse, Amelia. It's destroyed everything I've touched. Then give it back to me. Diana laughed bitterly. There's nothing left to give back. The company is bankrupt. The investments are worthless. And the house is mortgaged to the hilt. If you want your inheritance, you can have it. You can have the debt, the stress, the impossible decisions, and the guilt. You can have all of it. I will have it. I'm taking you to court. Diana, I'm going to expose everything you've done, and I'm going to reclaim what's mine. You'll destroy us both. The scandal will ruin what's left of the company and the family name. Is that what you want? What I want is justice. What I want is 20 years of my life back. Diana sank back into her chair, suddenly looking older than her 52 years. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could make it work. Thought I could grow the company and prove that Dad was wrong about me. But everything I touched just made it worse. Why didn't you just tell me the truth years ago? Because I was ashamed. Because I knew what I had done was wrong. And I couldn't face the consequences. And because... She paused, struggling with the words. Because I was afraid you would be better at it than I was. Dad always said you had his instincts, his compassion. I was afraid you would succeed where I had failed. Looking at her now, defeated and broken, I felt a moment of unexpected sympathy. Diana had stolen my inheritance, but she had also trapped herself in a prison of lies and guilt. She had spent 20 years trying to prove herself worthy of something she had never earned, and it had destroyed her. But sympathy wasn't enough. Justice demanded consequences. I'm sorry it came to this, I said, heading toward the door. But I can't let you destroy everything Dad built. I won't let you waste my inheritance on failed investments and personal indulgences. Amelia. Wait. I turned back. Diana was crying now, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. What if we worked together? What if we found a way to save the company without destroying each other? It's too late for that. Diana. You made your choice 20 years ago. I left her there in the living room, surrounded by the luxury she had bought with my money. And I didn't look back. The next morning, I filed suit against Diana for fraud, demanding the return of my inheritance and control of Thompson Industries. I also contacted the district attorney's office and provided them with evidence of Diana's criminal fraud. The story broke in the local media within hours. Businesswoman accused of stealing sister's inheritance was the headline that appeared on every news website and newspaper in the city. The details were devastating: the forged will, the bribed attorney, the 20-year deception, and the systematic destruction of a family fortune. Diana's carefully constructed public image crumbled overnight. The charities she had supported distanced themselves from her. The business community turned its back on her, and her social circle abandoned her. She was exposed as a fraud and a thief, her reputation destroyed beyond repair. But the legal battle was just beginning. Diana hired an expensive law firm and mounted a vigorous defense. She claimed that she had acted in good faith, that she had believed she was protecting me from a burden I couldn't handle. She portrayed herself as a victim of circumstances, a woman who had sacrificed her own happiness to preserve our father's legacy. The trial lasted 3 months. Morrison, weakened by cancer but determined to make amends, testified about the bribes Diana had paid him and the documents she had forged. Maria provided evidence of Diana's mismanagement of the company and her attempts to cover up the financial problems. Marcus testified about Diana's admissions of guilt and her erratic behavior. Diana's lawyers fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict in my favor. Diana was ordered to return my inheritance and pay additional damages for the 20 years of fraud. But winning in court was easier than collecting the judgment. Diana's lawyer had been right about one thing: there wasn't much left to recover. The company was bankrupt. The investments were worthless, and most of the assets had been sold or mortgaged. By the time the legal fees were paid and the debts were settled, my inheritance had been reduced to a fraction of its original value. However, I had won something more valuable than money: the truth. The real will was now public record, and everyone knew that I was my father's chosen heir. More importantly, I had saved what was left of Thompson Industries and could begin the long process of rebuilding it. The first thing I did was implement the changes my father had always wanted. I redirected the company's focus from profit maximization to social responsibility. We began working with nonprofit organizations to provide services to underserved communities. We established scholarship programs for disadvantaged students. We created jobs for people who had been forgotten by the traditional economy. It wasn't easy. The company was still struggling financially, and I had to make difficult decisions about layoffs and cost cutting. But for the first time in 20 years, Thompson Industries was operating according to the values my father had believed in. Diana didn't face criminal charges. The district attorney decided that the evidence, while compelling, was too old and too complex to prosecute successfully. She was allowed to plead guilty to a civil fraud charge and pay a fine. But she avoided jail time. She sold the mansion and moved to a small apartment across town. She lost her position on various charity boards and was quietly asked to resign from the social organizations she had once led. The woman who had once been featured in society magazines as a pillar of the community was now largely forgotten. Another casualty of her own greed and deception. I saw her one last time, about a year after the trial ended. I was leaving the grocery store when I noticed a woman in line ahead of me, paying for her purchases with food stamps. It took me a moment to recognize her. Diana looked older, worn down by stress and guilt. Her designer clothes had been replaced by department store basics, and her perfectly styled hair was now a simple ponytail. She saw me looking and turned away, embarrassed. But I walked over to her anyway. "Diana." She looked up, her eyes filled with shame. "Amelia. I didn't expect to see you here. How are you doing?" "I'm surviving. I have a job now, working at a nonprofit downtown. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." "I'm glad you're okay." "Are you? I destroyed your life, Amelia. I stole 20 years from you. I wouldn't blame you if you hated me." I thought about that for a moment. Did I hate her? I had, for a while. The anger had consumed me during the trial, had driven me to fight for justice even when it seemed impossible. But standing there in the grocery store, looking at this broken woman who had once been my sister, I found that the hatred had faded. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "I'm angry about what you did, and I'll never forgive you for it. But I don't hate you." "I'm sorry," she said, and I could see that she meant it. "I know it doesn't change anything. But I'm sorry." "I know you are." We stood there for a moment, two sisters who had been torn apart by greed and lies, surrounded by the mundane reality of grocery shopping and everyday life. Then Diana picked up her bags and walked away. And I let her go. I never saw her again. Today, 5 years after the trial, Thompson Industries is thriving. We're not the largest company in the city, but we're making a difference. We've created hundreds of jobs, funded dozens of community programs, and helped thousands of people improve their lives. It's the kind of legacy my father would have been proud of. I'm 47 now, and I've finally found the life I was meant to live. I have a beautiful home, fulfilling work, and the resources to make a real difference in the world. But most importantly, I have the truth. I know who I am, what I'm worth, and what I'm capable of achieving. The 20 years Diana stole from me can never be recovered. I'll never know what my life would have been like if I had inherited my father's fortune when I was supposed to. But I've learned that justice isn't just about punishment or revenge, it's about setting things right, about ensuring that the truth prevails, and about using whatever power you have to make the world a better place. Diana may have stolen my inheritance, but she couldn't steal my character. She couldn't steal my compassion, my determination, or my ability to turn suffering into strength. In the end, those were the things that mattered most. The manila envelope that had started it all now sits in a frame on my office wall. A reminder of the power of truth and the importance of fighting for what's right. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the legal battle, if I wish I had just let sleeping dogs lie and lived with Diana's lies. The answer is simple: I regret nothing. Justice delayed is not justice denied. And the truth has a way of surfacing when it's needed most. My father's real will wasn't just a legal document. It was a testament to his faith in me, his belief that I would use his legacy to make the world a better place. And that's exactly what I've done. The last time I drove past the mansion where Diana used to live, I didn't feel anger or bitterness. I felt satisfied. The house has new owners now. a young family with children who laugh and play in the gardens where I should have grown up. It's being used for its intended purpose, to be a home, not a monument to stolen wealth. Diana's lies gave her 20 years of luxury, but they also gave her 20 years of guilt, fear, and ultimate disgrace. My pursuit of truth cost me decades of struggle, but it also gave me something far more valuable, the knowledge that I am exactly who my father believed I could be. In the end, that's worth more than any inheritance could ever be.